75% of Americans would now vote for a gay person. That's a big change from 10 years ago.
Yep.
60% would vote for a Muslim. 58% would vote for an atheist. Socialist, 47. It's at the very bottom of the ballot. They hear socialist, they think herpes, Bernie. We have to get this.
Then the Congress voted for $1 trillion in tax breaks for the richest people in this country and the largest corporations. That's a giveaway. We just increased military spending with very little discussion. I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too.
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right. All right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right.
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism. That's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow.
Right.
Bill Maher just unleashed a brutal takedown, live, unfiltered. Bernie Sanders is dominating headlines again. But Maher isn't holding back this time. Sharp, relentless, direct hits to the core. But here's the twist. This isn't personal. It's about the entire strategy collapsing.
When he ran in 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices the Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business.
Maher isn't attacking legalization itself, he's exposing the strategy behind it. Sanders pushes identity-based rollout ideas. Critics call it reckless. Politically explosive. Wait, it gets worse. Maher mocks the logic completely. Picking winners based on identity? Dangerous game. This is where it collapses. He argues competence should come first. Always. But the real problem isn't that. It's what this signals about bigger policies.
For example, Bernie Sanders, his big thing was always bringing single-payer health care to our country of 340 million. But when liberal, tie-dyed Vermont tried to do it for a population of 626,000, it collapsed like that poor fuck in the Oval Office last week. Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet.
Then Maher goes straight for healthcare and no hesitation. No mercy. Single payer becomes his next target. And then this happened. He brings up Vermont, a perfect test case. Friendly territory. And it still failed. Hard. Financial pressure crushed the plan. This wasn't theory. It was reality. What Maher says next is brutal. If it failed there, how scales nationwide?
Testing if we move toward a Medicare for all single-payer program, which guarantees health care to all people, it would cost a lot of money. That's true. But what they forget to tell you is it would be much more cost-effective than the dysfunctional system we have right now, which is the most expensive per capita on earth.
But it couldn't even work in your home state of Vermont. They were going to institute it, and the governor said, it's going to cost too much money. We just can't do it. It would be the entire budget.
No, well,
that's true.
Well, I'm not the governor of the state of Vermont. I'm the senator from the state of Vermont.
Sanders' own backyard couldn't make it work. That irony? Critics can't ignore it. Small state, liberal base, ideal conditions, and still, total collapse. Wait, it gets worse. Costs skyrocketed beyond expectations. Oh, here's the uncomfortable question. If Vermont failed, what about America? This is where doubts explode, and Maher knows it.
The question is, Bill, you tell me, why is it that every other major country on earth,
I will tell you why.
Yeah.
Because they control both ends of it. If you're saying that the government is going to pick up the tab, but not make the insurance companies, the hospitals, and the doctors not gouge people,
right,
then we are going to break the budget. It has to work both ways.
Exactly.
And okay, so then
But here's an example.
So you're going to make the hospitals do that? Because that
the
is
United
socialist.
States is the only major country on earth that allows private insurance companies to make huge profits in the healthcare system.
Right.
The function of healthcare should be to provide quality care to all people, not to make huge profits of the drug companies.
Now the system itself gets exposed. Free healthcare sounds powerful. But incentives? That's the real battlefield. Maher warns of system abuse, overbilling, price inflation, unnecessary treatments. And then this happens. Costs spiral out of control. Fast. This is where it breaks down. Government faces brutal choices. Higher taxes. Fewer services. Tighter control. None of them look good.
The DSA are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal?
Then immigration enters the firestorm. Maher shifts gears. Hard, he questions enforcement gaps. Loose systems. Weak oversight. Wait, it gets worse. Asylum loopholes. Visa överstays. Sanctuary policies. Critics say control is slipping. But here's the twist. Maher isn't anti-immigration, he's anti-chaos. Structure matters. Without it, trust collapses.
Either defund the police or military in the streets. Either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods. Governor-elect Spanberger once said about Biden's presidency that, quote, nobody elected him to be FDR. They elected him to be normal. Normal. You know, at this year's DSA convention, or as it's commonly known, Comic-Con, get this, you had to submit a photo of a negative COVID test to get in 2025. Yeah, no one wants to do that shit again.
Now it turns political and personal. Maher targets Sanders' electability, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. Too extreme, critics inside his own party say. Yes, even Democrats are skeptical. This is where it gets brutal, strong base. Weak expansion. Passion doesn't win elections alone. Maher says voters want practicality, not rigid ideology. And that gap? It's growing.
We want to deal with the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in America. Very few people think it is acceptable or moral that the top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. That we have seen a proliferate.
But see, Bernie, you always say that, and I think even the Republicans are not for income inequality. They hear that, but it doesn't compute that that's going to be solved by socialism. Socialism is the programs they already like. They like Social Security. That's socialism.
But
they like Medicare. They like the VA. They like the military.
No, that's exactly right.
Then comes the bigger reality check. America already has safety nets, food aid, health care programs, income support. They already exist, and they work. But here's the twist. That's not full socialism. Not even close. Maher draws a hard line. Fix what works. Don't destroy everything. And then this hits. History offers warnings. And they're not pretty.
75% of Americans would now vote for a gay person. That's a big change from 10 years ago.
Yep.
60% would vote for a Muslim. 58% would vote for an atheist. Socialist, 47. It's at the very bottom of the ballot. They hear socialist, they think herpes, Bernie. We have to get this.
This is where skepticism explodes. Socialism sounds great, on paper. Fairness, equality, guaranteed support. But reality? Very different story. Wait, it gets worse. Heavy control kills innovation. Incentives disappear. Growth slows. And then this happens. Shortages. Delays. Limited choices. People start losing control. And that fear? It's real.
Right.
Do the American people believe that the largest corporations and the wealthiest people who today are doing phenomenally well while the middle class shrinks, do people believe they should be asked to pay more in taxes? The American people say yes.
Okay. But now this has been studied. The amount of tax revenue that we would get just from taxing the people who I think your fans think you're talking about, the people who own a yacht, does not come close to covering what you want to pay for.
Now Maher goes after the money. Tax the rich isn't a magic fix, that's his argument. The real issue? Spending efficiency. Billions already flow through government systems. And yet, problems remain. This is where it collapses. Waste. Mismanagement. Massive overruns. Projects explode in cost. Deliver little, though here's the real question. Why demand more before fixing this?
Trump, the Congress voted for $1 trillion in tax breaks for the richest people in this country and the largest corporations. That's a giveaway. We just increased military spending with very little discussion. I don't know if you know this, by $80 billion. Military industrial complex.
Including the Democrats.
Pardon me?
The Democrats vote for it too.
Yes, absolutely correct. Absolutely right. All right.
But that's socialism, the military. That's crony socialism.
Well, that's
right.
Crony capitalism.
But the military isn't capitalism. That's the government.
No, but it's who owns the military industrial complexes. All right, but anyhow.
Right.
And this is the core battle. Ideology versus reality. Big promises versus real-world results. Maher's message is clear and controversial. Ambition without execution leads to disaster. Wait, it gets worse. Voters are watching more closely now. They want results, not just vision. And that tension, it's rising fast. Oh, here's the question. Is this bold reform or a coming collapse? Hit subscribe. Stay sharp. More coming next.